What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we've been talking about the PlayStation 5 custom shell situation for a little while now, where we've seen some big companies like Dbrand throw their hat in the ring, and then some smaller companies kind of just leave after apparently receiving cease and desist orders from Sony. Well, one is making return for like the third time. This time, however, when asked about cease and desist from Sony and the legal rights around it, they say they are untouchable from Sony. We'll talk about that one here today. Also, we are going to talk about Zelda Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64, as the beta version appears to have been discovered and files are posted online. People are going through them and finding all kinds of really cool things. And Balan Wonderworld, it's out in a couple of months, but turns out you might be able to play it a bit sooner than you originally thought. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps that a ton. And if you're new to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Game Pass, specifically over the next few weeks, as Microsoft announced several games heading to the service, a few of which we already knew about, but then some other pretty cool ones that they have announced. Let's go over here to their website. They posted up this card that shows some of the titles, but starting from the top, we have Control, Desperados 3, Donut County, and Outer Wilds, all heading to the service, that being January 21st. Then we have Cyber Shadow. This is going to Android console, PC. This is the game basically releasing outright just on to Game Pass on its release date, which is awesome. That being January 26th. That game is looking really, really good in a lot of the previews, and I'm pretty interested in checking that one out. Then we have The Medium, if you are not aware, that is also dropping on Game Pass day one, that being January 28th. And then alongside of that, January 28th, we also have Yakuza Remastered Collection, that being Yakuza 3, 4, and 5. That's a lot of Yakuza dropping all in one day there on the service. And then games that will be leaving, this being January 29th, include Death Squared, Death's Gambit, Final Fantasy 15, Fishing Sim World, Grease, Indivisible, Reigns, and Sea Salt. So pretty good selection there of games. A lot of stuff dropping in like the last week of this service for January. Some games leaving, but that's kind of what we've gotten used to now. A lot of games come in and then a lot of games go out. It's a revolving service, but seeing games like Cyber Shadow, Medium, and even Control on PC, along with a ton of Yakuza, not a bad couple of weeks there for Game Pass subscribers. Also, if you missed it or forgot, Hitman 3 is out today. I'm looking forward to picking this one up later on today and checking it out. Still trying to decide if I'm getting it on the Xbox Series X or the PS5. The PS5 with the adaptive triggers might be the way to go just because it adds a bit to the gameplay. But either way, let's head over to the Metacritic page here, where we can see it's fluctuating between an 87 and 88 last I saw. Right now it's at an 88, but looking through the reviews, I'm very excited for this game after going through them, because while some people are pointing out that the storyline seems kind of nonsensical with the third edition here, the biggest thing I was interested in is the overall, I guess, gameplay and maps that are introduced here and how creative they could make them. Turns out very, very creative. And that's the best part here, is because I don't want the maps to feel the same, or the situations that Agent 47 is put in. Does not appear to be the case here. Sometimes it gets very ridiculous in some cases, and that's exciting stuff for Hitman 3, where each level is supposed to feel more like a puzzle, kind of, and how you can get to some of the outcomes and complete some of the objectives in different ways. So yes, exciting stuff here for Hitman 3. I will be checking this out, see what kind of weird and wacky situations that Agent 47 finds himself in and then finds his way out of. Oh, and for everyone kind of keeping up to date on Nintendo's finances or their corporate situation, which, I mean, at the end of every quarter, we'll talk about their different sales and kind of where the Switch is sitting and how many each game has sold, copies and all that. Well, it looks like they've opened a Twitter account, I guess, to kind of separate it from just Nintendo of America or Japan or any of the other places. You can see that here. They announced this saying, we've opened this Twitter account to deliver Nintendo Corporation Limited corporate and investor relation news. Financial announcements and other corporate focused information will be shared on this account. Please note that we will not respond to messages or inquiries. That means we can all ask them when the next Nintendo Direct is, which everyone started to do, probably more as a joke, but this is probably where they would have done something like announce next level games being acquired. Like, that's a good spot for that. Or maybe just sales figures, so you don't have to go through their large PDF and try to find every little thing. Maybe they have some big announcements around sales they want to make. This is a spot to do it. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, maybe go over there and give it a follow. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with these custom PlayStation 5 shells. If you remember, we had a company by the name of Plate Station, and they had to take their website down because they say they got a cease and desist from Sony. Well, the way I saw it, it was more for the name rather than the shells. And that's, I think, one of the big reasons we see some places like Dbrand, for example, challenging Sony and calling Sony out, because I don't think there's that much around the shell itself, especially with some of the modifications that we've seen being made where they're not shaped exactly the same or all of this. I don't really think Sony is sending out these cease and desist orders for that. But if we go over here, we can see it's now called CMP shells. Now, they do describe this CMP shell as basically like a blackout shell here. So you'll basically just make it all matte black, it appears, except for, I guess the center will still be glossy black. But either way, this is going for $49.99, and it does also have a Ragnarok decal, and they even have like a Kratos bundle that also has vinyl kind of stickers for the controller, or one that's just all matte black with a vinyl sticker for the controller. I don't know why they feel the need to do like Ragnarok or God of War style stuff with the system and the shells. That seems like something that maybe Sony would take exception with, whereas I would assume if you're just selling the shells like these where it's all black, you would probably be okay with that. But here was something that was, they would decide to just answer ahead of time. Won't you get sued? The patent is pending and all sales finalized before it's approved are untouchable. We didn't know before, now we do. Further, we have not replicated anyone's proprietary design. Our shells improve upon the original by allowing for more ventilation. We will be able to sell even after the patent is approved. They go on to say that these shells will arrive at your door by the end of February, and they have 1,000 shells total in this batch. Now, the thing with what we're seeing right now online for these different shells is there are a lot of sites that are popping up currently because they're looking to like drop ship these. They're also showing up on eBay because from what I've seen on AliExpress, they're just being posted up. Like you can go on there, you can buy them, but I think you have to buy them in bulk, like a lot. Like you can't just buy one or two, you have to buy like 100 or something like that. So naturally it's gonna be a bit more expensive, but I guess people are buying them in bulk, splitting them up, and then selling them for a profit. I don't know if that's what CMP Shell is doing here exactly, but I wouldn't put it like out of the realm of possibility. And then as for the explanation as to why they're allowed to sell them now, but they couldn't before, it doesn't make a lot of sense anyway, because they're like, oh, we could have sold them before, then we can also sell it afterwards anyway with this patent that's still pending. Now, what I think happened really is Sony didn't like PlayStation, and that makes sense because they're very, very close to PlayStation 5, obviously, with that. But looking at this, I think they just sold too many shells. Like they were just rolling along. It was all over the news. They were getting hit pretty hard, and they were in over their head with being able to manufacture these different plates, or for the plate station, these different shells. So now if they are looking at something like AliExpress to just do bulk orders, it wouldn't be too hard to fill as you get them in and then you just ship them out. Who knows? Maybe they are actually manufacturing these. I can tell you D-Brand is actually going to manufacture theirs, and they, I'm sure, have more announcements coming up for that as well. But there we go. I guess we're going to see more and more of these pop up online, with CMP shells being the latest one to show back up. Next up, let's talk about Zelda Ocarina of Time, but let's talk about a beta build of the game, one that has actually been discovered yesterday and started making the rounds online as files were being posted up and people started going through everything they could. And you're most likely going to see more and more things posted online as we go through the week here. But let's go over to Forest of Illusion, because they do mention where all of this came from exactly, saying we have a prototype Nintendo 64 cartridge of F-Zero X that contained data from an early build of Zelda 64 that used to be on the cartridge. We're estimating it's from Space World 1997. We're going to look into this more. Of course, everything will be released, and you can see some of the screenshots there. What I would assume happened exactly is that F-Zero X cartridge, the prototype cartridge, because the EEPROMs they used, they probably reflashed it, and just some of the data from the Zelda Ocarina of Time beta for Space World was just left on there, which shows early ideas and builds of the game. And people started posting just all kinds of screenshots, whether it was like dungeons or different character models, or even like a full, you can see a Hyrule World Atlas from the 1997 Zelda 64. There's also this finding here that was kind of neat. Haven't seen anyone mention this yet, but the hover boots appear to have been the Pegasus boots, as many have long suspected. However, I think the most interesting find so far in all of this is that we have descriptions for what those medallions were originally supposed to do. In the game, you collect medallions as you play through Ocarina of Time, and you didn't do anything with them. But there were original plans for them to be completely usable items by Link, and you can see some of those here posted up by Mr. Cheese. Now, some of them are self-explanatory: ice, fire, wind. Sure, that makes sense. You just have the element and you'll use it to do different attacks. But for wind, you would warp. That's how you would actually warp around, which is kind of cool. The soul metal is the one that is really blowing everyone's mind. because what you would do is you would actually turn into Navi and fly around. That's right. That would be a whole thing. And I have to assume that they did not put that in there because it could have broken the game, or maybe the 64 just couldn't handle that. Hard to say. But then you also have Metal of Light, Metal of Darkness, and that will kind of affect different things around you. For example, the Magic of Light that captures darkness and it would illuminate everything. Or if you have the Metal of Darkness, it appears to make it so that enemies can't find you anymore. But it's always fun when like an old retro game has a find like this and we start learning more and more about what the developers originally had planned for us, and then what got left on the cutting room floor. But I'm sure more stuff will come out from this, and I'll keep you up to date if anything really big is found. Next up, let's talk about Balan Wonderworld. This is Sean's AAA Knights game from Yuji Naka, and they've shown it a couple of times, and I noticed online people are still unsure as to what this is, confused even when they see it, and you know what? I'm not even 100% sure what this game exactly is. At times it hasn't looked great, and then other times it's like, oh, you know, it could be kind of an interesting game, I guess. Who really knows? But I have thought, you know what? Square's been doing a lot of demos for their different games, so maybe they do that here. Turns out they are going to do that. That'll be next week on the 28th of January, and it turns out it's going to be a fairly sizable demo. If we go over here to CCF Tech, we can see they say the demo will include a nice chunk of the game to test out to see if it's up your alley. It will come packing Acts 1 and 2 of Chapter 1, Act 1 of Chapter 4, and Act 1 of Chapter 6, as well as access to the Isle of Tim's hub area. This is where you'll be able to raise creatures known as Tims, so you'll get to learn a thing or two about that. What's more, this demo will support 2-person local multiplayer, so you don't have to go it alone. That's interesting that the demo will even have access to local co-op. I mean, it already sounds like there's quite a bit of content to play through for a demo, and like I said, we've seen Square do this quite a bit, even on the Switch. This will be a demo that's available on all of the platforms that's releasing on, but again, for a game like this that's coming out on March 26th, right there with Monster Hunter Rise, yeah, they need something like this. And here's hoping that the demo comes out and it's received well and people get much more interested in the game, because I just don't see as much talk about it for a game from like Yuji Naka that appears to have a lot of influence from like Knights. As we said, it's Sean's Knights AAA Knights game. So here's hoping the demo's good and the game is noticed a bit more around a time where Monster Hunter Rise is certainly going to be dominating the headlines and a lot of people's friends lists. Next up, let's talk about a game that was announced for the Switch from THQ Nordic. We can go over to their tweet here, where they say Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning is coming to the Nintendo Switch on March 16th, 2021, just in time before the adventure continues in the brand new expansion, Fates Worn, coming later this year. So this is interesting. Now, I kind of figured this was going to happen because when they first announced it and it was on like the Xbox and the PlayStation and PC, I grabbed it on the Xbox to check it out. And as I was playing it, I said, wow, okay, they remastered it, sure, but it didn't feel like it was like a massive jump or anything. And I kind of sat there, I was like, they could have moved this to the Switch, and I figured they would eventually. I guess it just took a little longer to move it over, to port it, make sure everything's good. And here it is now. You know what? If you have not played this game, it's an action adventure RPG style game. People like to compare it to like Skyrim, and it's a bit more action oriented, I would say, third person. Has kind of that Fable aesthetic to it, sort of. So I do think it's a fun game, but this is the game where I feel like the backstory of this game is more interesting than the game itself, to the point where Rhode Island even had to pay out tens of millions of dollars to get this done. Somehow Kurt Schilling's involved, and yeah, it's a whole thing. Apparently this was gonna have so much content to it that they were gonna branch off and have a full MMO RPG in this series. Yes, I don't know if THQ Nordic will take it that far, but the fact that they are doing a new expansion and they're making sure it's everywhere really that it can be, with the Switch now showing up with its version, is maybe good for Kingdoms of Amalur fans here going forward, and we'll see how it runs on the Switch March 16th. So not too far away, couple of months. I do think it's a good enough game that's worth checking out. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Pepino saying, I'm so excited for the RE showcase. I'll be careful to maintain my hype, but still. So the hype levels for this showcase have gone through the roof since even we did Newswave yesterday. I've seen people online talking about all kinds of stuff that's going to be there. Resident Evil 4 Remake keeps coming up. Look, we know that's coming. We saw it in the Capcom leaks even. It is a thing. But I do wonder if it's worth it for Capcom to put it here when the focus is supposed to be on Resident Evil Village. Basically, if they announce Resident Evil 4 Remake here, it is going to overshadow their next big release, which is Village. I don't know why they would necessarily do that. I think smaller announcements to coincide with the anniversary and then have it alongside of Resident Evil Village as the big showpiece makes the most sense. That's why I think I wouldn't expect too much more than maybe the classic PS1 versions of Resident Evil games like 1, 2, 3, something like that, getting ported over in a collection or just dropped on, say, like the PlayStation, the eShop, and the Xbox stores. That's what I would assume is how far they take it, but you never know. They could do something crazy, and sure, they could show Resident Evil 4 Remake. I just don't really know why they would do that when they're trying to sell us on Resident Evil Village that's coming out soon. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There was the PlayStation 5 custom shells, the custom faceplates. Have you been looking into picking one up, and have you decided which color you're gonna get, or did you think about just maybe taking the sides off and painting them yourselves? Let me know how that went if you did that. Also, what do you think about the Zelda Ocarina of Time and the beta version that appears to be showing up online? A lot of stuff out there, so let me know if there's anything really cool that you found when you were going through all of the information, all of the tweets. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.